Hi, everyone. My name is Philippe, and welcome to this Pharma Live webinar on why risk managers should look at artificial intelligence now. I will be the moderator for this today's session. During this webinar, you can ask questions using the chat box on the bottom left of your GoToWebinar player. You will have also a few polling questions. This will pop up right on your screen. You are always welcome to join the discussion at any time by Twitter using the hashtag @PharmaWebinar. Today's webinar is dedicated to artificial intelligence and risk management. Artificial intelligence is developing fast and creates significant opportunities in a wide range of sectors. Healthcare, making diagnosis more precise, enabling better prevention of disease, improving the efficiency of production system through predictive maintenance, etc., etc. Today, we see the development of coronavirus tracing apps using AI.
C'est Gustave?
Oui. Est-ce que Corentin est là parce que je voudrais lui parler?
Il est parti chez Lily, avec Lily, chercher des pistolets à eau et ensuite ils vont dans notre jardin pour faire une bataille.
Allô?
Yes, Philippe, please go ahead. It was Tiffen talking. Sorry,
Okay.
we have some technical issue with the sound of Tiffen, but please go ahead.
Okay, so we had really opportunities on artificial intelligence, which we need to continue to develop. We see also, for example, the coronavirus contact tracing apps, which is using AI to detect your COVID-19 exposure. In addition, AI involves also considerable risks, in particular in terms of fundamental rights, product safety, liability, and consumer protection and data privacy. As we are now seeing AI moving mainstream in business applications, risk measures, as we are, must ensure that we are keeping the pace. So that's why we will discuss today on how AI can be implemented into the risk management practice, which opportunities is AI creating for better risk management, and hopefully we have also European Commission who will be joining today and explain to us the regulatory approach that they are promoting in order to create an uptake on AI in the EU and address the risk associated with certain use of this new technology. So today we have two additional speakers that should be with me today. It seems that they have some technical issues that they are trying to resolve, and hopefully by the time that they will have to present their topic, this problem will be solved and we will be able to address it. So we got Irina Orssich. Irina Orssich is a team leader for artificial intelligence in the unit Technology and Systems for Digitizing Industry within the European Commission, and she coordinates AI strategy for the European Commission. Irina will present the key elements of the European Commission's white paper on AI, which is just published last Friday. And this communication puts forward the first time a European approach on AI, laying down the conditions for its development and use, ensuring, of course, and that's a key element, the respect of our European values. Eric Badiqué would be also joining this webinar and making sure that this problem is being solved. Eric is advisor for artificial intelligence at European Commission, and today Eric will present the EU initiative in the field of AI to the fight against COVID-19. So as we move on in this presentation, maybe let's talk about the first intention and the first initiative that Pharma took about AI applied to risk management. And in fact, the purpose of that document was threefold. First of all, it was pretty clear that AI was taking more and more importance, and we need, as risk manager, to improve our awareness about that new technology, that new development, and apply that into our overall risk management process. But first of all, in order to make sure that we are able to tackle that, the first point was, let's talk about that. Let's make sure that we have the same playing field about what is AI, and to provide to our risk managers community the same level of understanding of what AI means and what are the different key elements to appreciate AI as a first step, as a concept. Then once that being done, of course, AI includes a number of new risks, and we wanted to make sure that we explain and we develop how we can integrate AI into the risk management process, making sure that it's fully incorporated into our risk management strategy, and therefore to provide that to our top management. And finally, and probably more importantly, making sure that we are proactive and not just reactive to AI development, and taking the opportunity of AI to incorporate that opportunity into the risk management and develop new opportunities for risk managers applying AI. And that's what we really wanted to emphasize, and to encourage a risk manager to develop new projects, including AI. Okay. So first of all, I mean, the first point is why and how to implement AI in risk management. And my point today is not to really come back on what is machine learning, what is deep learning, what is natural language processing, all those sort of concepts that are natural for the experts on AI, but probably not so much for the risk managers, are of course available and displayed within this document, and make sure that this is something which is available and give the same view for all the risk managers on those key concepts. But then on the next page, the first element which is really important is data. There is no AI project without data, without quantity of data, but also quality of data. And what we really wanted to emphasize is that we need to identify within our environment the topics where you have both combination of quantity and quality of data. And there are some 5 V's that are allowing you to express the synthesis of data management. So first of all, you've got variety and veracity. Variety and veracity, they inform you about the quality of the data, and that's really an important element for the success of your project. Volume and velocity are factors that allow us to understand, determines which ecosystem must be used. And what I mean by ecosystem is the set of infrastructure, analytics, applications, which must be used to capture and analyze data. And finally, velocity and value are clearly playing a role in the determination of the components of the algorithm which will be deployed on this AI technology. Then on the next page, once you got those data, both in terms of quantity and quality, you need to be careful about the use of that data and the method to exploit them. There is a clear correlation between the result that you expect and the difficulty you have to exploit those data. It all depends on the target that you have in terms of deploying a new AI project. It can vary from understanding what happened, and clearly here it's probably the first level of maturity for an AI project, to the prescriptive analytics, which allows you to identify what needs to be in place for a future scenario to be able to occur. And of course, this magnitude of evolution in terms of project drives both the difficulty and the value of the project itself. And that's where we come to the first part of our webinar with this polling question. Do you assess AI-related risks in your organization? And we give you just a few moments to be able to vote and to provide your opinion on that. So we got a result. The result shows that you have, at the moment, a majority of not assessing AI-related risk in your organization, and that's not of a surprise. We are in effectively a deployment phase, and I think the purpose of this webinar and the purpose of all the documents we have produced and what EU is currently doing is effectively in order to support the deployment of AI in the long run. Once we have that, effectively the next phase is for the risk managers is to be able to include AI into a risk management process. Clearly, AI incorporates new risks for the company. We have to increase the vigilance for the risk managers and the top management about AI exposure. And the COSO 2017 ERM framework gives the foundation for the deployment of AI into that system, and in 5 different dimensions. So, for example, governance and culture, we have to address the questions of what ethical issues have to be checked by the board to ensure the integrity of the use of AI. How does board analyze the ultimate liability applied for AI to the different process? How do we have AI-related skills, capabilities, knowledge in hiring and talent management to promote integration? Clearly, we have this, both the capture the new talent, but also manage the risk and the ethics into the deployment of new AI projects. Then we move to strategy and objective settings. How does the board define and follow the risk appetite regarding AI? What kind of dependencies and impact on whole capital resource in short, medium, and long term could we have? Finally, we have got performance. So the performance risk is really how do the organization and critical stakeholders evaluate the operations, reporting, compliance objective. How does AI impact the risk profile, and what are the new risks that are generated from that? How is it possible to identify and challenge the organization through an AI issue? Is there any risk response strategy to avoid, reduce, share, or accept or define a new general AI risk? Review and revision have also to be involved. Are there collaborative, inter-organizational meetings between risk managers, data scientists, which is really the new sort of competence that we need to bring in, AI users, AIT teams, which are used for the infrastructure supporting AI projects, and to review AI-related risks. And finally, information and reporting, how to organize the communication channels to stakeholders whenever an anomaly linked to the use of AI is detected. All that put together, really the way AI framework is implemented. And I think we need to explore whether our guest speakers are with us to exchange on the way the EU is proposing to develop this white paper.
Good afternoon, Philippe. It's Laetitia. Unfortunately, Irina and Eric have difficulties to join the webinar. So what I suggest for you now is to go straight to the benefits part. So the benefits and the opportunities for risk managers to apply AI. And we will try and see if Irina and Eric can join us meanwhile. So please go ahead and continue with the third part of our PERMA report. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, really one of the main objectives for PERMA was to motivate risk managers in the development of new projects, including AI. If you go to the next slide, there are four main benefits from AI for risk managers. They are first on the data processing. The data processing is really an important element in terms of developing risk visibility. Risk visibility is, today a challenge because we are developing only manual or static process with an historic view. We need much more data, and to get those data is as well a challenge. We have to address internal risk information. We have location data, critical supplier, customers, critical resources, and these are key elements to improve the visibility on our risks. Developing this sort of application for risk managers would have clearly an impact in real-time visibility and indexing of the value. And we all know as risk managers how painful and difficult currently we have as a mission to identify the real values of those information. Then we are going to improve efficiency. How do we do that? Two elements. Of course, we're going to reduce the cost for day-to-day assistance and the risk management process, and that's really incorporating the vast improvement that could be offered through IoT device. On the end, it will also open the floor for a new area. This is about correlation of risk. We have both a difficulty to aggregate all our risks and to understand the dependency of all of them. And the reality of the economy of today is the fact that we are much more interconnected, interdependent, and clearly the dependency on those risks is a key element to assess our exposure. We need more data. We need to collect through a risk identification process all the required data, and including maybe third-party data as well, because this enlarged enterprise, which is now our ecosystem, has a clear impact on the exposure we face today. AI application through machine learning models, identification, correlation that may be not obvious, and help in the process of quantification. Identification, quantification are key steps in our risk management. And using this sort of development would allow us to have a much better view in terms of transparency on the overall risk exposure. The third element is how to manage complexity. And managing complexity is improving protection and improving reaction. predictable claim still occurs. And the asset as well as the workforce are not fully protected, and we cannot protect just everything. So we need to identify what are the key elements that we need to mitigate, the key elements where it is of efficiency and value to protect as a priority. It is also a question of risk appetite for the companies. Once we have that in place, the point is, how do we make sure that those information that can come from either sensors, ERP systems, external information like weather or credit rating, and using that as a tool to reinforce a learning model, including feedback, in order to identify what are the key strings that we need to pull in order to have a faster reaction on relevant events and of better protection. And it will have a huge impact. Why? In terms of business decision. And this is probably the area which is the most promising in today's reality. Why? Today, insurance market and insurance coverage is static, both in terms of time and in terms of behavior. On the end, we have the reality of hardening conditions on the insurance market sector, and we see that on each and every insurance line. So the question is, how can we propose some alternative of a new dynamic insurance coverage in order to develop some new applications which are able to address the data that we need, but to develop a new price model and to identify the risk profile and the actual behavior which will be necessary, but which also would prevent an added value for the insurers and an alternative to the conventional approach which we currently face as a result of no alternative. We have to also to learn from claims. We have today a limited amount of structured data captured per claim. We need to improve that. Improving the quality about claims data and the qualitative information as well as quantitative information will have an increased impact in terms of efficiency, in terms of mitigation, post-claims learning, and in a today highly complex and correlated world, this will be of huge impact. In a few words, and before going to our last polling question, we need to encourage our risk manager to develop a true AI roadmap. And this AI roadmap is to identify the problem. And this problem has to have both a requirement of large amount of data and quality of data. You need to think big and to start small in order to be able to have a proof of concept of your project. Allowing them to create then a repository for your AI data requirement, because you have to plan for the infrastructure which will be necessary to address the points that we have to face. We have to define build or buy. The data quality, the storage issue, and the resource pool are all different elements in your AI roadmap that you need to address. Having said that, so I understand that our guest speakers are online. So shall we go to the polling question number 3, or shall we move to the second part?
We can do the polling question.
So yeah, so the polling question which is important is, do you plan to use AI tools to perform your risk and insurance activities? And I hope that my presentation has incentivized you to develop new projects for risk management. But let's see what will be the result. So do we have a result? Wow, it's very impressive, and I'm very surprised, but I see that we have half of our guests that are planning to use AI tools for risk management, and that's a very promising result. Thanks you for that. So now, if we have our guests, can we maybe get the opportunity to have, I think what is really important is this presentation from Irina and Eric. First on Irina about the key elements about the new European Commission white paper, which has just been published in February. Irina, are you with us?
Irina is not there. Eric?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Eric. Hello.
Okay, so I am here. I suppose Irina should be here. She said she was on the phone as well. We are very, very sorry to be late because we had some trouble with the application on our corporate machine. So we are on the phone, and I guess we will be able to. You'll have to be patient with us. Maybe tell us exactly where you are on the slide, and then we can follow and we can speak with the phone.
Yes,
Irina,
of course, Eric. You can start. So I am on the slide where you would start on the AI and robotics to respond to COVID crisis.
But let's try to see if Irina. It might make more sense if she starts. Anybody is in touch with her?
Unfortunately, not Eric. Let me see.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
we can hear you now.
Perfect. Sorry, I was muted. So I was trying to tell you something, then I was sending you an email. I'm terribly sorry, but here I am.
You can go ahead, Irina. I will start with your slide on the white paper.
Super. Let me see whether I can see it, because at least I could just see the slides Philippe had shown. For now, I don't see.
Okay,
Yes, I do.
but,
Perfect. Perfect. Okay,
see them.
sorry.
Okay. No worries.
So the first slide gives you the nice little title, which is the white paper on AI, a European approach to excellence and trust. So what is important is that we have this twofold approach of excellence and trust. For us, these are two sides of the same coin, and the one cannot be built without the other, and the one can't exist without the other. So basically, this is what I'm essentially going to talk about. And please start with the first slide. I will start to give you a bit of background. So we have adopted, as I said, this white paper on the 19th of February. But indeed, this was not the start of the journey, but we have been working on AI for some time. Our research colleagues have been supporting research into artificial intelligence and robotics since 2004. And from the political side, the European Commission for the first time adopted a strategy, AI for Europe, in April 2018. On that basis, we started work with the member states on how to push AI forward. And in December 2018, we adopted a so-called coordinated plan. We put together a high-level expert group on ethics, but also then on policy and investment recommendation. And they came forward with their draft, or with their ethical guidelines last year in April. These ethical guidelines are indeed very important for what we are doing now. And with policy and investment recommendations in June 2019, we had, as you will know, the new commission coming into office at the end of last year, and Ursula von der Leyen, the new president, had said in her declaration, in her agenda for Europe, that within her first 100 days she would put forward an approach on ethical AI. So here we are on the 19th of February with the white paper. Could I see the next slide, please? So here you see that what we are doing actually is not isolated at all. And if you see like all the flags below, we started sometime last year updating this little graph, but it shows that there are countries and also international organizations all over the world adopting strategies for AI, and also that international organizations like the OECD, the G7, G20, OECD, Council of Europe, as well as plenty of standardization bodies are very, very active. So this is just the context in which we adopted our white paper. The next slide, please. So this is now titled Ecosystem of Excellence, the Potential of AI. We are having a huge potential of AI. There is a study saying that the potential contribution to the global economy by 2030 could be as high as 15.7 trillion US dollar. So this is the potential we are having. And when we are talking about risks, indeed, there is a risk that we will be losing out in terms of competitiveness, in terms of being part of that development. But then we also see that there are only 12.3% of European companies which use big data. And I heard that you were discussing data today before. So something very important indeed for AI. And we also know that there are plenty of citizens, but also of companies which just don't trust it sufficiently to adopt it. Which means that in order to tap into the potential of AI, we need to create the right framework. We need to create the right framework in terms of trust and of excellence. Could I have the next slide, please? For that, we want to build on our strength, on the European strength we are having. And this is that we are excellent on research. We have a world-leading position in robotics. We are very, very strong in the business-to-business domain. And from that, we also have a lot of industrial data. And we are strong in a number of industrial and service sectors like automotive, healthcare, agri-food, financial. So in order to use all these strengths to build on what we are having, we want to create or to support this ecosystem of excellence. Could I have the next slide, please? And that includes 6 key actions. One of which is to join forces with the member states. This is what we have been doing already since April, since June 2018. I was talking about the coordinated plan before. We want to continue to strengthen research and innovation. We know that we have a gap of skilled people, talent in Europe. We want to help companies. We want to help companies in terms of financing, but also in terms of transferring research results to the market. That we want to do with Digital Innovation Hub. We want to work closer together, the public and the private sector, and we also want to promote more of AI in the public sector. So this is important also from a risk point of view, because as I said before, there is a certain risk of not having AI. So these are the tools which should help companies, which should help Europe to get AI developed and deployed for our own purposes. And this is something where also you, coming from your company perspective, can check, like, where would I need help? What kind of research could we do? What kind of products would we like to test? So here is a lot of help we can provide to you. Always bear that in mind. And with that, I get to the next slide and the ecosystem of trust. So as I said before, one of the problems is that there is a lack of trust, and this is a main factor holding back the broader AI uptake. So there are some specific characteristics of many artificial intelligence technologies. We're talking here in particular about opacity, the so-called black box effect, complexity, unpredictability, and partially autonomous behavior. All this may make it hard to verify compliance with and may hamper the effective enforcement of rules of existing EU law meant to protect fundamental rights, including safety. This is how we wrote it in the white paper. So what is important is that there are things we feel we do not really understand, and there are already quite some laws in place, like the safety rules, like the data protection regulation. But to many players, it is unclear how these rules can be enforced, how these rules are applicable to artificial intelligence, and how artificial intelligence develops in this system of law. So this is something we want to look at in the context of the ecosystem of trust. And for that, we don't want to regulate any AI out there. We know that there are plenty of little apps or music recommendation systems or other things which do not really pose any risk to us and to our society, to our fundamental rights and to our safety. But we want to have, could I have the next slide, please? We want to have actually a system where we identify AI-specific risks, and from there we take a risk-based approach. So for example, how does it work with machine learning? The probabilistic nature, how does it work with continuous learning? Is there a specific risk in this? What is about the quality of the data sets used for training? Is there any bias in them? Is there anything which makes the AI leading to failures afterwards? What is about the design of the algorithm of the system? Any other? And we'd be very curious to hear your input there. And when we have identified these risks, next slide, please, we would like to focus on high-risk applications. So we want to ensure a proportionate regulatory intervention. These high-risk applications, and here we are also very curious to get your input, would be essentially based on a twofold approach. First of all, we would identify sectors where we believe that there is a high risk. That could be indeed in the field of automated transport, that could be in the field of health applications, possibly financing. So we're trying to identify fields where we believe that there is a high risk. And from there, as a second step, we intend to look into the individual applications, because not everything in a given sector might be dangerous, but there might be completely undangerous applications. So these should be the high risk applications to be regulated. The one thing is, what is important is that we are going to create a very predictable and stable framework that companies can assess from the beginning easily whether an application is considered to be risky or not risky. But at the same time, we need to develop the legal framework in a way that it can be easily updated, because the artificial intelligence developments are so dynamic that also what we consider high risk or low risk needs to be very, very dynamic. Next slide, please. So what do we want to do with this? Well, first of all, a couple of questions in that context. So these are the two levels of risk we were presenting in the white paper. Would you believe that these are enough? So to say high risk or not high risk, and not high risk, no compulsory legislation? Or would you perhaps see that there are more than two levels of risks? How would you specify high risk areas? How flexible do we need to be? What do you believe are the most relevant areas? And how, in your opinion, could we achieve legal certainty? How dynamic can we be in the same time? So these are all the questions we are currently discussing in order to find a good approach to the high risk approach. And as I said before, we are very happy to get your input. Next slide, please. So what would we be doing with these high risk applications is to put requirements on them. These requirements, as we propose them in the white paper, would relate to the quality of the training data, then to keep record of the data, but also to keep record of the algorithm and how the algorithm was built up. It is about the information to be provided. So be it that people are aware when they are dealing with an artificial intelligence, or be it something like a paper you get when you're buying some product in the pharmacy, telling you how to use it and how not to use it and what the risks are. Then there is the criterion of robustness and accuracy. So this is very much linked to the question, how safe is an artificial intelligence? How accurate is it? And how robust is it, for example, with regard to cyber attacks and other possible risks? There is a criterion of human oversight, which means that at the end, the AI should be under human control. Indeed, in practice, this will change from application to application. And then there might be specific sectorial requirements, like, for example, for biometric identification systems. Next slide, please. So this is about what we would be doing in terms of enforcement. For the high risk application, there could be ex ante conformity assessments, and then there could be also ex post market surveillance schemes. Indeed, this should be the case only where this is strictly needed and with a minimum of burden to companies. So exactly the burden which is necessary, but not more than that. We would also pay specific attention to the needs of SMEs and startups. Then for low risk applications, we would be looking at a voluntary labeling system. So this could be based on the same criteria. It could also be based on the work by the high-level expert group, but it would be a voluntary system. And again, the question I asked before, should there be something between the high risk and the low risk? And with that, I thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Irina. And then comes these polling questions, which I think is interesting, because what really was spectacular for us is that your risk-based approach is fully resonating with the way us as risk manager is addressing AI. So the question we would like you to answer is, do you believe that this proposed EU plan will effectively encourage AI development in Europe? Yes, no, or unsure? And during the time the people will effectively vote, Irina, do you want to say some words about the expectations, the feedback you expect on your white paper from the audience and from the wide audience globally?
So from this audience here, indeed, since you are risk managers, we would very much hope to get some input on where you see the risks, how we should define them, whether there should be rather 2 or 3 different risk categories. Like, just to hear from your practice, how do you specify high risk areas? What kind of flexibility do you have? Anything in that direction would be very interesting.
So, well, Irina, I think we have quite a promising result. We've more than 50% believe that your plan will effectively encourage AI development in Europe. We still have some people that needs to be convinced, but I think that for a start, and given the conditions you had today, Irina, I think it's more than a very good result.
The 37% because I couldn't connect in time and I wasn't relaxed. Okay, next time.
I'm sure we'll go to 90%. Then we go to the last part of our presentation, which is about applications. So on that, Eric, but conscious of time, if you could maybe stick into 5 minutes, that would be really excellent. Eric, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'll try my best. So can you move to the part on the COVID response?
Yeah, we are. So in digitization.
Okay. So maybe let's move to the first COVID lesson, digitization. That's where you are. I'm sorry, I'm blind.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say just a few words because I went through your paper, which is quite interesting. The paper that you published a few months ago, I believe. And I thought that you were very optimistic at the beginning about the capabilities of AI. So things like only tech we treat as human intelligence performed by a machine. But then I was pleased to see that in the rest of the text, you had you came down to a much more realistic view of what AI is. So AI, we are today in a situation where AI can be very effective, but for some very specific applications. So I think we're still very far from a general purpose AI. So that's important to realize. And what one can see the AI, and I think this is also quite clear in the paper, as an evolution, as the next step in digitization, if you like. And I think this is what is important for your audience to understand, but I'm sure they do. So if I come back to the presentation, so I was asked to say a few words about what have we learned from the COVID lesson and how does that impact our next steps. So I think first on digitization, I think the crisis is, I like to say, it's a kind of a perfect storm for us to experiment with some of the ideas that we discussed for the past couple of years. But we had already this idea with the new commission that we need to reinforce our strategic autonomy, that we need to be careful with supply chains and so on. I think the crisis has really underlined this and will have an impact. I think we've seen some examples. For example, medicine supply coming from China, from India, etc. So I think there are some strong thoughts at this moment to reconsider this, and also on the tech side, I think this underlines what our new commission had already pointed to. I think also, and that's my second point on this slide, that the crisis through the lockdown and the experiment we are doing today, and you see we have to make do with very basic tools sometimes, like just the phone now, but we are really experimenting very strongly with new tools, and we are refining them, hopefully. So I think this is going to change the way we work. This is going to change the way we do things. It will accelerate things. And the third point is that I hope, I mean, that's more, well, it's a personal view, but it's also, we have the Green Deal in the Commission, and we have these ideas about a different future. And this is really going to trigger, because we are doing a unique experiment. I mean, it's the first time we stopped the economy and we restarted. So it is a unique opportunity to also do things differently. Can you move to the next slide, please? So that's called COVID Lesson 2, Trust and Data. There, I think Irina introduced very well the work we do on trustworthy AI and on putting some framework around AI. So I think all the discussion we have today about tracing tools, tracing apps, etc., about bias, quality of training data, we have it underlines also some of these issues we've been raising with respect to the use of AI. For example, now we see some applications coming from China to analyze CT scans to detect COVID. So big question is, of course, what kind of training data have they been used with? Have they been trained with? How can we make sure that this is solid, etc. So I think this also brings a lot of very new and interesting lessons to us. And the final point I would make here is on the international side, of course, the international cooperation more important than ever, and also whether the success that we have had with GDPR, with privacy-related regulations and rules, whether this will also have an influence in that direction, because people through these apps may become more aware of the issues. Now it could go the other way as well, so we shall see. But in any case, it's a very interesting time. Next slide, please. So you should have the slide on our initiative that we call AI Robotics versus COVID-19. So at the beginning of the crisis, already 2 months ago, we launched a survey tool to collect ideas on initiatives that would try to address the COVID-19 crisis with technology, and also on solutions, on specific solutions. We received a lot of input through our different networks that we already have, but also through this open call. So a lot of different solutions and initiatives. Next slide, please. What we had asked was for people to give a sense of readiness of these applications. So whether they would be deployable quickly, or whether they would still need some development. So we have some data on this, and we had a first kind of group of applications were around diagnostics, patient handling, telemedicine, telepresence, etc. And we see that we got quite a balanced set of solutions. We have, of course, more details, and I could share that as well. But on how this pans out in the different application field. But I think what we see very importantly is the diagnostics, the telemedicine, telepresence. This is coming really strongly, and also the logistics in hospitals, for example, that would benefit, or that could benefit from a lot of these kind of AI applications. And I'll move to the last slide. You asked me to be quick, so I'm trying. Last slide. So what are we going to do with all these ideas? I think first of all, of course, we are brokers, so we have our networks, and that's what we're using at the moment. So we're trying to connect providers with those who need solutions. We've had a number of tracks, and we will communicate soon about this, maybe in a clearer way, because we're waiting for things to be finalized. But we've procured, we have worked with providers, we've worked with some hospitals to procure solutions, either for diagnosis or for example, sterilization, cleaning, etc. So some of these solutions we'll communicate about, but we may do more. There is now what is called an emergency fund that is being created, so there is some work going in that direction. We will have also a number of special research and innovation calls for solutions that need further development and testing. And there will also be some announcements there. There were already a couple of things that were done very quickly based on existing running projects to sort of top them up. So we will also communicate about that. We are looking at finding private money to connect some of those solution providers with private investors. So we are organizing pitching events and such things. As you may know, we also have a lot of activities around digital innovation hubs around Europe. So this is also an important network that we are trying to leverage to make sure that some of these solutions are being spread out, are being deployed. And finally, there is also a lot of actually structural funds that were that have been allocated to some countries and that are still unused. And we are trying to find ways to use some of these structural funds to finance some of these solutions. So I've given in the slides, there is a link to the repository, and for those who are interested, you can have a look there. So thank you for your attention, and look forward to the discussion.
Yes, and thanks, Eric, for being so quick. We got some questions, but we have only 3 minutes left, so I would just leave it to one question to both Irina and you. This white paper that you're presenting talks about the use of voluntary or monetary labeling scheme. Who will develop this labeling scheme for AI? Will it be a new body that will be created for that, or will it be an existing agency which will take this role?
Irina, you have a go?
I can do it. You know that we had the high-level expert group, and they were publishing the guidelines for trustworthy artificial intelligence. These guidelines have criteria for trustworthy, ethical artificial intelligence, and also an assessment list. And this is a very, very important basis. Now, we also propose the 5 criteria in the white paper I was just talking about. And the voluntary labeling scheme would be based, and that very much depends indeed on the outcome of the public consultation we are having now, but it would be based on the 5 criteria, respectively, the work by the high-level expert group. Currently, we are developing it. The question would then be, who would be there for implementing it? And this is a general question of enforcement. So who would be doing that at the end of the day? It could be an agency, it could be a unit within the Commission. This remains to be seen and is also open to the public consultation right now.
Okay. One last question, Irina, Eric, very quickly. So one thing that appears quite quickly is the fact that AI is also quite depending about data in terms of quantity and quality. The question is, who the one who owns the data may build the ultimate point of sovereignty. So we know that in Europe, we don't have a cloud management system that exists more in the US or in China. So how do you see from a sovereignty standpoint the challenges that EU has in order to make sure that we can develop AI independently and autonomously?
Well, I think on the cloud side, I mean, what we have been talking about is the white paper on AI, but we have also other initiatives, as you probably know. Huh? So there are some strong initiatives coming now on the data side. So when we came out with the white paper, there was also a data strategy paper that is also under by the way, under consultation. So and we invite you and your participants to contribute to that. And there is also a big ideas that started actually in some member states, Germany, France in particular, but others as well, and to which we are contributing, which are being transformed into a European initiative on having more sovereignty on the cloud side. So I think watch this space. There are other ideas on how to improve the way we deal with data, we store data in Europe as well, because we know that we have a deficit there today. Of course, we depend very much on non-EU providers for cloud services, and we think this needs also to be addressed. Irina, okay, maybe you want
also to regarding the applications like GoToWebinar, which maybe is not a European-based application. So this webinar has come to an end. I would like to apologize for the few technical questions technical issues we faced today. I wish you can invite you to visit the WEFERMA website to download the report and to contribute to the consultation on the EU white paper. We are currently working on preparing our feedback. You will receive the replay of this webcast and the slides within the next 24 hours, and we will answer the questions that we were not able to answer right now. For the REMAP certified risk managers, please don't forget to log your CPD points for attending this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Irina and Eric, for your time and flexibility in this current context. I hope this webinar was informative and useful, and I inform you that we will have a new webinar coming next soon for the European Risk Manager Survey, which will be in June. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.